Success stories and interviews with game changers and thought leaders who have overcome both in life and in business. Welcome to Vertical Momentum.
Hey guys, check out the new episode, the new podcast. Appreciate you guys. Just remember, if you guys want a podcast, there's no better way to do it than Anchor. Number one, it's free. Everybody loves free. Free. And then you can also record and edit your podcast right here and not have to go anywhere else. And Anchor will also distribute your podcast to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many, many more. So guys, definitely, if you're looking to podcast, use Anchor. Love you guys. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Vertical Momentum. I am your host, Richard Kaufman, also known as the Comeback Coach. Guys, you know, on this show, we talk about game changers and today's thought leaders. And the gentleman that we're going to be talking to today is doing both. He's truly amazing. But first, I want to thank our sponsors. If you guys love hoodies, T-shirts, swag, definitely check out my brother Paul. He has a company called Victory Warrior. They make the best T-shirts, hoodies, and he will also personalize them for you and your company. So check him out. He's also a veteran. And if you guys know me, all my sponsors are 100% veteran, 100% of the time. So check out Paul at victorywarrior.com.
Test 1, 2.
Can you hear me, brother? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me, brother?
I can hear you now, man.
All right. So, like I was saying,
connected.
You are. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
I got you, man. Here we go.
I got you, Lima Charlie, brother.
Awesome,
like
man.
I was telling everybody, I'm so blessed to have you come on today. We just became friends, and I'm grateful that you're in my circle, and I appreciate you, brother. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic, man. Are we? Is this live right now? Are there people?
We are
right
live,
now?
baby.
Oh man, that's
yeah,
awesome. I thought we were just recording it for later.
I mean, this is recorded, but there is no editing. It is what it is, brother.
I love it, man.
So, what's going on? How's your day starting out?
Man, my day has been incredible so far. I was up at 4:00 this morning and took the dog for a run. Was able to get in some stock trading this morning. I've just been working, been grinding out, man.
I love that.
Today?
I'm doing great. I got up this morning because I have a good schedule. So I got up, got to talk to my wife for a little while, had my energy drink. So now I'm ready. I just released an episode with Colonel Five Coat that was in charge of the brigade commander of all Ranger and Airborne. So that was pretty cool. So
That's
now I get
cool.
to talk to the man, the myth, the legend, Caleb.
Howdy. I'm excited.
And you know, I love your story, by the way, and we're going to get into a lot of different things, guys. So if you're listening to this, this is going to get real. So if you have kids around, they might not want to hear this because, as I don't know if you know, Caleb, but I've been in recovery for 32 years now. I'm a recovering addict and alcoholic. And that's one thing I love about you, that me and you can actually talk, real talk, and maybe save some lives while we're on here. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, man. We've it's been a while since we talked, but when I first got into the tribe about 2 years ago, we shared our stories with each other. And so this is going to be an amazing conversation, and I'm really excited to be able to hopefully be able to help some other people out. You know, I was just talking to somebody yesterday, and I was like, you know, all the pain that I lived through, and more importantly, put the people that I love through, it wasn't worth anything if I don't use it for something. You know, if I'm not able to take that and turn it around and be able to at least do something productive with it, then it was literally a waste in my book, man.
I love that, you know, and I tell everybody that, you know, for me personally, you know, my mess is now my message. So I actually get to help people. And, you know, like my mentor, Ed Milet, told me that, you know, things don't happen to you, they happen for you. And everything is a teachable moment. So that's the way I look at things in life now. Instead of saying, why me, start saying, well, why not me? You know what I mean?
That's great, dude. I like that
So
a lot,
tell it,
man.
where were you born and raised, and what was little Caleb like?
Oof, man.
We're gonna hop into way back with you.
We're just going straight into it. All right. I was born in Cincinnati, Ohio, um, to a extremely religious, Orthodox kind of family, Southern Baptist, and so my dad was actually a pastor, and so we traveled all around the world as kids. My dad was a missionary, so we lived in Israel growing up. We lived all over the U.S. Lived in Europe for a short time, but didn't really was unique, very much so like growing up a military kid, in that like you never stayed anywhere for more than like 6 months to a year. You never had friends, and so kind of grew up a little secluded, a little sheltered, uh, and yeah, it was an interesting childhood. It was a it was hard. Me and my father had a rough relationship growing up. I am excited to actually say that me and him talked and saw each other for the first time in quite a few years, just 3 weeks ago for my birthday. Um, and that man was the the forgiveness and the love that we were able to recapture and restore in our relationship in a matter of 4 days after not really seeing each other or talking in 3 years was really incredible, man. It was beautiful. But total tangent there. Sorry, little rabbit hole.
No, this is because sometimes you listen to these podcasts and it's all fluff, and we know you're an entrepreneur, and we're going to talk about that later. But I want to get to know the person behind the uniform. You know what I mean? Because
Yep.
I always believe that facts will tell, but stories sell, and everybody has a story. And I want to get into your story, and I guess that's what makes me different. Now I guess people are calling me like the veteran Joe Rogan or the veteran Ober. Because
It's fair, man. It's
I try to
fair.
go deep, and because some people, you might say something to somebody that might touch their heart that you don't even realize. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I hope so. If I don't, I'm going to be kind of disappointed in myself. I hope I'm out
Well,
here making a difference. If not, I feel like I'm wasting my time.
me too, brother. Me too. So now, uh, I grew up. Well, I lived out south for a while, and I was around Southern Baptist, and it's kind of a lot of times, because I try to be a Christian man. I fail every day, but I always had that hellfire and brimstone,
Yep.
and I didn't realize what a loving God we actually have.
Oh, absolutely.
So
Man,
you know,
that revelation is something that I am just now realizing within the past probably year and a half. Um, is kind of understanding grace for the first time in my own life, and then just in my walk in my faith as well. Like growing up with that fire and brimstone from a spiritual aspect and from a parenting aspect and just kind of a lifestyle, and then transitioning into the combat arms world of the military. It's difficult to get out of that. Like what is grace after all that? Like what is being able to say something but then choosing not to, kind of. And so I am beyond grateful that I've been able to pretty much just learn how to shut the fuck up.
I totally get it. You don't know how many times I go on Facebook and type out something, and I'm like, never mind. It's not worth. It's not worth the drama.
No, it's
Guys, if
not.
you're listening to this, we don't know where this conversation is going to go because it's like two brothers just having sitting down over a cup of coffee. So we're going to be all over the place, and that's okay because that's kind of what we do. But just talking about there's a difference between religion and relationship. And I always had because I grew up without a father, and once I started referring to God as Dad, it kind of changed my whole perspective. That He's a loving and caring, and now that I'm a father of three children, I know how I want to protect and take care of my children. So I could just imagine how He wants to love and protect us instead of sometimes he gets that big bad name of God, and everybody, like you said, thinks hellfire and brimstone, and you're like, why would I want to get close to a person get close to God if he's like that. But he's really a loving and caring God.
He is, man. I actually, just kind of like a little personal note here. I started calling him Abba, which is Hebrew for like Papa. Like a very endearing term for like daddy. Like young child daddy.
Yeah.
And it really is, man. Just that personal connection. That relationship, and it's the walk. It has nothing to do with the rules. It has nothing to do with the and I don't know if we want to even go down the religious rabbit hole today,
No.
or if we want to keep it off other places. But we could have a lot of conversations around a lot of places. Why don't we try to find a topic to stick to? Because if not, I will bounce all over the place.
Well, I got it. Don't worry. Like I said, I've had over 200 interviews, so I can steer our conversation. So, what were you like in high school? Were you an athlete? Were you good in school?
I would say good in school. I was homeschooled pretty much my entire life, and so I hated my circumstances. I didn't want to be there. I wanted to get out of the house. You know what I mean? Like be my own man, be an adult, get out there and be somebody. I thought the world was going to be mine for the taking, and so I just wanted to get through high school as quickly as possible. And so I actually worked pretty much just all day long on school. When I was 14 and 15 to be able to graduate early when I was 16. But my high school years are just nothing but me doing school. I was homeschooled. We didn't really have friends. So I literally just would get up and do my chores and then just do school all day long until I go to sleep.
So you graduated at what age?
16.
So obviously you can't join the military.
Not yet. No.
I mean, I joined at 17, but that was way back in the day.
Well, man. Yeah, I joined on my 17th birthday, so it wasn't long after that I was up and gone.
All right, so now because this is interesting me, because I love talking to everybody about their recruiting stories, because everybody has a recruiting story, and I find them very interesting. So, what was your recruiting story like? Did you go into a recruiting station, or did they come find you? How'd that work?
Man, I went to the recruiting station with exactly what I wanted and where I was going and what I wanted to do, and you couldn't tell me anything otherwise. I was that guy. And it was funny because I walked in and I was like, I want to be 11 Bravo and I want to have an option 40 on my contract. And it was like 2013 at the time, 2012. And they were not looking for grunts at the time. And so they tried for weeks to get me to do anything else but be an 11 Bravo. And I literally wouldn't even talk to them unless it was about me joining as an 11 Bravo. I was like, no, I'm not interested. Goodbye. And so that, I loved that because for me, I wanted to join the military because I wanted to do what I couldn't do in the civilian world. Like if I wanted to go and be a computer engineer, I would go to college and do it. If I wanted to go and I wanted to be a nurse or a medic, I would go to EMT school or I'd go to be a nurse. So I wanted to join to be able to get the opportunities that you cannot get in the civilian life.
Okay, so now because I was when I first went in, I was a 19 kilo, which is a tanker. And then I had the opportunity to go to school to be a 19 Delta, which is Cav Scout, and then 11 Bravo. So,
you went all around.
Everybody realized that as soon as your tank gets either blown up or breaks down, you become an 11 Bravo. So now, exactly, start hooking up with your leather personnel carriers. So now because this is interesting for me because you're homeschooled. You really didn't get out much. So what was it like? Because I grew up from the streets, and when I went to basic training, I was like around 100 guys from all around the world, and it kind of blew my mind, because it was a total. I hate cursing on here, but it was like a total mind fuck because here are these people from down south, everywhere around the world, and my whole thing was just being in a street. So what was your whole world like? Because your whole world was just homeschooling and doing schoolwork, and now all of a sudden you were like everybody.
Yeah.
What was that like?
So I was blessed to have the opportunity to, before I joined the Army, to work as a carpenter for quite a few years. And so I was a little used to the rough and tough, for lack of better words. So at least that part didn't hit me as too much of a surprise. But just you have to imagine kind of 17-year-old Caleb, right? So I literally had to get a waiver to join because I was so small. I was 5'8" and I weighed 102 pounds. I had never had a girlfriend. I had never, like had any kind of substantial friendship or meaningful relationship in my life. So massive amounts of social anxiety, eh, awkwardness that you couldn't describe, just kind of like that weird, like what was that? There's just that guy that just doesn't know how to just fit in. And that was me, man, to a T. And so I showed up to basic training literally just like the baby. And my nickname was Baby Blair. And so,
Yeah, because you're 17 years
yeah,
old,
man,
right?
fresh 17 with literally no life experience other than just a few years of carpentry for my neighbor, and a very fundamentally flawed framework and worldview coming from just my upbringing. And man, I'm forever grateful that that is the route that I went, because the massive amount of exposure that I received while in the military, that culture shock was just a massive, overwhelming, very early understanding that, hey, you don't have this all figured out and you got a lot of crap to rework here. Like you have a lot of stuff that isn't normal. You have a lot of stuff that is causing detrimental effects in your own quality of life, your own mental health, your own thought process, your own relationships. Being able to see how different I was from everybody else, and not just that, but even seeing, within a platoon, there's not a lot of similarities. You have every different walk of life possible, every single ethnicity, every single religion, every single upbringing. It's all blended. And so then for me to still be just like the one weirdo, I was like, okay, something's really weird here. Like something's really off. And so
Now, were you high? Did you take to the military? Were
massively,
you one of those high speed soldiers?
massively, man. I lived, ate, breathed Ranger training book. I mean, could not get enough of it. In my off hours, I was studying hand manuals, shooting in my free time. I mean, you name it. If it made me better at my job, I was chasing it.
Now, you eventually graduated, and then did you go to Ranger School?
I actually failed out pre-RASP, um, on a sit-up. My hands came unlocked on sit-ups in the pre-RASP PT test and got booted for it.
Wow.
Yeah, man. And so that was like the kind of the first real big, like, hey, life doesn't always give a shit what you think or what you want. I had never really
So
experienced
then
it before.
talk to us, because like that happened to me one time. They sent me to one of the schools, and I missed out on the PT, something like 5 seconds or something, and I had to take the walk of shame and go back to my unit. So talk to us about that mindset. Even though you failed at that one thing, because I tell everybody that failure is an event; it's not a lifestyle. So talk to us about that failure mindset, and then you were just because I talked to a Navy SEAL, Rich Deviney, the other day, and we were talking about mindset and how we have to start changing, and it really changed my mindset. He says, in battle you have 2 minutes. He's like, it's called the 2 minute drill. That you whatever's going on, whether you're happy or sad, be happy or sad for that 2 minutes, and then you have to move on. So what was your mindset like when you got back? And because I'm sure
Garbage,
people cracking on at any unit,
garbage.
because like we all do, we crack on each other. So what was
I
your
mean,
mindset like that you weren't going to quit?
man, in all honesty, I had no perspective back then. I had no idea about mindset, framework, kind of the power of the mind. Like, I honestly was in a terrible place. Like, that was the very first time that I ever drank. Um, and that was immediately, a problem. My first time drinking, I think I had 17 beers, and like first time ever. I never tasted alcohol previous to that, and did not handle it well at all. Like total pity myself, feel bad for myself. Um, it didn't. Believe it or not, the guys actually didn't rag on me. Like they all were actually felt bad for me as well. Um, like I was a 300 PT guy. Like there was no way I would have failed the PT test. You know, especially that event for me to get kicked on it. It was kind of a bull thing. You know, for lack of better words. Sorry, I'm trying not to curse as well. It's not normal for me. But so yeah, man, I totally took it to heart, man. I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm a screw up. I can't do anything right. You know, like I really got down in the dumps over myself. Um,
Now, did you get deployed at all?
so I at that point got sent to Alaska. That's where I got stationed. And when I was in processing, they actually took volunteers for a peacekeeping deployment to Kosovo for 14 months, where I was the on the S3 desk. um, which was just weird. It's not like anything you can describe that I've ever heard of any other kind of rotation or deployment. It was just weird. We did a lot of crowd riot control as a unit. Like I said, I was in Brigade 3, so I was doing personnel security detachment and operations and stuff, which was at the time miserable. You know, I was an infantryman. I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to be at a desk. That's not what I signed up for. You know, all they said was, "Hey, who wants to get deployed? Raise your hands." And there I go. Yeah, let's go. And they're like, "All right, cool. Here's your desk." and but looking back, man, the amount that I learned from the people around me there and the leadership and being around brigade commanders and the brigade S3 and seeing a deployment at a brigade level operation tempo was massive for my development as an entrepreneur.
And, I love that because, like, I was a ground pounder for a while, and then I had the opportunity one year to just hang out in the talk and just learning, operations, and to start looking at things in a bigger picture than just squad level. And and I can totally get it in business because one time, I was managing a $1 million a year general nutrition company a year, and I thought I was doing something great. And one of my friends invited me down to his. He owned the largest supplement company in the world, and he was doing $1 million a month. And it kind of just blew my mind because it kind of opened me up to, wow, the world is so much bigger than what I'm thinking about. So I totally get your mindset. Did you ever get deployed again, or
No,
was
man,
that it?
that was it. One thing I want to touch on real quick, I think it's cool to note. Um, the other thing that was about that unique about that opportunity was, as much as I loved all my team leaders and my squad leaders, when I was in a line unit, um, that was the first time that I ever truly saw individuals interested in personal development. You know, that personal growth, like people reading books about how to improve their mindset. Specifically, I will say that's one thing that's unique about most officers is that they have that kind of foundation that uh, they're at least aware of the concept of personal growth and development. You know, and that it doesn't just happen. It's not
Yeah.
just a natural thing. You don't just wake up one day and do it, or know how, or come to the understanding, or it's a grind that you have to pursue. And that was when the first time I really realized that yes, there is stuff that's wrong with me, but I don't have to be a victim. You know, like up until that point, I had very much so just felt sorry for myself. Like, we'll get into this more as we talk, I'm sure, but later on in life, I got diagnosed with complex post traumatic stress from my childhood. And then also, I was clinically bipolar. And so I didn't know any of this at the time. And so all I knew was that I was just essentially this emotional wreck that didn't know what to do with himself and just felt different from everybody else around him, but didn't know how or why, and couldn't even like communicate it in words as to what I was dealing with or feeling or struggling with, but just knew that it wasn't normal and that I wasn't dealing with the same things that everybody else was. But I just thought that I was fucked. I was like, this is me for the rest of my life. I'm just going to be like this. And suicide was a really big struggle for me previous to that. But when I saw for the first time how you change, how you become better, like what do you actually do about it? It was such an eye-opening experience for me because I was like, I'm not just stuck like this. I'm not stuck in this
Yep.
spot. I'm not stuck being the man I am. I'm not trapped here. Like, man, I remember saying this exact phrase. I just want to be better, but I don't know how. Like sobbing in my bedroom with a gun in my mouth over and over and over, and just really not knowing what to do. Like, what do I do? it's like trying to tell somebody to describe a rainbow, but they're blind, or describing a rainbow to somebody that's
Yeah,
blind.
and
It's what is it?
yeah, I get it because it's kind of like you're trying to you tell a deaf person to listen harder. It's kind of like, no, that's not the way this goes. So anyway, we're going to get into that. But so how many years did you do
So
total?
I only did 2.5, man. I was involuntarily separated for some behavioral issues that I had, which
Wait, are you sure that me and you aren't
yeah,
brothers?
we
Because that happened the same thing happened to me two
I
and a
know,
half years
man.
in. My uncle Sam decided he didn't want me to be his nephew anymore, so he like said you got to go. So what was that like?
Man, you want to talk about just soul crushing? Um, it was unique because still to this day, like with full accountability and ownership and the maturity that I've been able to instill in myself since then, I would not do anything different in the situation that I was placed in. Um, to make a very long story short, I was involved in a motorcycle incident. I was on a motorcycle. My ex-wife at the time was on a motorcycle, and we were with a group of about 100 different riders. And there was an incident with a truck that ended up getting into a road rage fit and tried to run a bunch of individuals off the road. Almost crashed two bikes. It was really all on YouTube, made the news, was pretty wild. I ended up confronting him like while driving, like tried to stop him, and ended up breaking his mirror when he tried to run me off the road. The police investigated the whole incident. We were all of the bikers were found at no fault and were free to go. We released all of our video evidence to the police, so on and so forth. And the individual in the truck was wanted last. I never followed up on it, but when it happened, they were looking for him and looking to charge him with attempted vehicular manslaughter. And my chain of command we didn't have a great relationship, me and my CO. Um, and they used that opportunity to general court martial me for destruction of personal property valued less than $200 for breaking the mirror on the truck, and then separated me from the military for it.
All right, so now I have a question, because now we're going to get into now, guys, this is when it starts to get real because I know, I got thrown out of the military the first time for being a drug addict and alcoholic. Got back in, and then I gave my everything to being Sergeant Kaufman. So I volunteered for every school. I took every correspondence course. If you said I need somebody, I'd be the first one there to volunteer. And I lived the NCO creed. And then when I finally became soldier of the year and so on and so forth, and I got hurt on duty and they medically discharged me, I didn't know who Richard was. I was the only person that I was
It's such
Sergeant
an
Kaufman,
identity crisis.
and I didn't know who Richard was. So talk to us about because this is when I'm sure we'll get into the mental health and stuff. So what was your transitioning like when
Man,
that
it was
happened?
the perfect
Because
storm.
like my friend Nick Valentine says, once your foot hits the street and you're no longer in the military doesn't give a shit about you. Your phone stops ringing, and all of a sudden, you lose your camaraderie. And we think we're hardcore, even if you guys are airborne, but we get used to getting paid on the 1st and the 15th, BAQ and all that stuff, 30 days paid vacation. But when you hit the streets, you don't have anything. So what was your transition like?
Terrifying. If I had to summarize it in one word, man, it let me give you a little backstory. I got back from my deployment, and this is why me and my CO had a bad relationship. Got back from my deployment and then was reassigned to a line unit. So we got back on a Friday and processed to said company on the same Friday, and then went on my weekend. First weekend back, and had bought a motorcycle before we even got back, and went and picked it up. And then that weekend got pulled over doing 145 and a 35 at 18 years old with a single beer in his system, and charged me with a DUI. And so that was my introduction to the company, and my company commander, and that was kind of the background on why we had an issue. But the issue came up because did not end up getting separated for that because of my connections through my time in S3, which is not really essential to the point. But all that to say this, that it was very much so a personal vendetta. Um, and that from the time that I got notice of my court martial to the time that I was out of the military was 3.5 weeks. Um, and so at the same time, I also had my new wife that I had just married and met at the same time, because I'm a brand new private that just got back from a deployment, and that's what we do. Who was 3 months pregnant, um, and so I had just lost my job, and me and my ex-wife at the time had just gotten into a domestic violence incident, which I was actually the victim in. And I was no longer allowed in my residence until I was out of the military, and so I was stuck in the barracks while I was out processing, and then got out and either had to move back in with her or just be homeless. And so I ended up just being homeless, man, when I got out for like 3 months. And
Now,
this was
what
in
state was
Alaska.
this? What state? Well, that's got to be a crappy place
I
to be
would argue the
homeless.
contrary. It was summer, and so there literally was not a better place in the world to be homeless, in my opinion.
Okay, so now now because this is the way I look at it. When an adult acts out, because now we're gonna start getting back into the mental health stuff. It's usually because of stuff that happened between the ages of 3 and 13. Usually, not every time. And then you add military to the mix, and then you add alcohol or drugs to the mix. For me, it was both. You have the perfect storm, and nobody teaches you how to get out of the perfect storm unless somebody else has been in the perfect storm. So, what was your, I say, what was your come to Jesus moment where you're like, all right, I need help. I got to get help or else I'm not going to make it. Because I remember that my day was Memorial Day 2012, the day I attempted suicide. That was my breaking moment. What was your breaking moment where you decided I need help?
It was a year and a half after that. I just continued on a downward spiral. At the time when I got out, I was already drinking extremely heavily, like a fifth to a fifth and a half of Jack Daniels a day. And then when I got out, that even escalated to almost to two. And at that point, alcohol just wasn't enough, and I switched over to drugs. And so this lasted for a year and a half, to the point where I lost all rights to my daughter. I ended up having another kid with another woman in the same time, and just really destroyed everything that I had ever thought was possible for my life. I'm getting a little emotional here, so I'm trying to keep it together. But I got to the point, man, where I actually slit my wrists in the bathroom with a piece of broken glass off the mirror that I had just broken in a fit of rage. And I sat there and I said, I'm either going to call 911 and I'm going to try to survive this and I'm never going to find myself here again, or I'm just going to sit here and this is over because I don't have it in me anymore. And I made the decision, man, to call, and ended up getting taken to the hospital. And man, I still don't know how this happened, but I was released within 24 hours, and immediately just right back and was high again within 2 hours after getting out. And ended up, again, I was like, what did I just made that choice with myself. What am I doing? And it was just like the amount of shame and guilt that I felt, about myself, like literally not even 24 hours later, and here I am again. And
And I just want to, say something real quick, because people that are listening to this, I'm an addict, and I can totally relate. And, I was talking to a guy, some people know him as the bassist in Motley Crue. His name is Nikki Sixx. And he actually overdosed, died. They brought him back and they released him. And not even 2 hours later, he had the needle back in his arm, overdosing again. And it's the addiction. They call it chasing the dragon. it's people don't understand what the addiction it is and how it ruins your whole life because all you're thinking about is getting that next drink or that next drug. So I totally understand where you're
For
coming
me,
from,
man,
brother.
it was so much of I can't be sober. Like I can honestly say that. So cocaine was my drug of choice, but I wouldn't say I'm a cocaine addict. I'm just legitimately an addict. I didn't care what it was. I didn't care what I got my hands on. Whatever it was that wouldn't make me feel the pain that I felt when I was sober, I was all about it. And it was literally just running away from everything that I felt or couldn't stand to feel when I was sober. And so
Now, did you go to 12-step program? How did you finally get
for
clean and
me,
sober?
man, me and my son's mom were both addicts. She was the one that kind of got me introduced, and it was hard because we were both struggling together. Um, so we ended up actually moving back to New York with our son. This was late 2017, uh, and that was what did it for me, man. Just getting away for the first time, I was able to breathe and not have to deal with anything. I moved back with my family, which was extremely stressful, but I can say that it was honestly not that bad because we had an in-law suite over the garage. It was a detached garage. And so I was able to stay over there and not have to deal with the family much, but also at the same time just be able to for the first time ever just sit there. And I didn't have a job, I didn't have a car, I didn't have anything I could do, I didn't have anywhere I could go. And for the first time ever to force myself to process. You know, it was the first time that I couldn't run away from the processing of my emotions or thoughts. And that was what did it for me, man. And then about 2 months after that was I'm still super struggling at this point, but I have a grip at least. But I for the first time, and people laugh at this every time, but I tried smoking um, weed for the first time. I had done every drug you could think of. I'd all over the map, but hadn't smoked weed. And so I was like, you know what? I'd rather do that than drink a beer right now because at least it's natural was what I told myself. But man, when I started smoking for the first time, it was like I could process my emotions and sort through them and not have them hit me like a tidal wave. Um, and then that was kind of like the first realization to led me to realize that there was something that was uh, scientifically, from an anatomy standpoint, off. That THC did something that allowed me to just feel normal. Like I could literally just sit there and think about my emotions and didn't have this overwhelming urge to put my face through a drywall, you know? Um,
Yeah. Now, New York just legalized recreational, and so did New Jersey. So, it'll be a lot easier to get without having to get that marijuana card
yeah.
or whatever.
And I actually, I don't even smoke much anymore now. For me, it was really just, it allowed me to get down the road, if that makes sense. It allowed me to get started on the road to recovery from a mental health standpoint. And so that's kind of just one thing I want to touch on here looking back is I have the perspective now to appreciate that I am an addict, but addiction wasn't my biggest problem. My biggest problem was my mental health and my lack of care of it. Um, and that I'm blessed to be able to say that I really don't even struggle with cravings now anymore. I don't. I could look at cocaine and just say no. I've done it. There's been multiple times where it's been presented to me. I'm like, nah, I'm not even interested in the slightest bit. Has no appeal, and it's truly because I'm just so delighted with me. I like who I am now, and that's just such a wonderful experience, man. I don't even know how to describe that.
And a lot of people, like I said, we're talking about addiction and mental health. A lot of people think, okay, well, I'm just going to move to, they just move to another state, but they don't realize that they're taking themselves with them. Wherever you go, you follow. So it's an inside job to get, healthy again, and, to help recover.
Absolutely, man.
And some of the things that I realized, when somebody asks, well, how do I, how can I change? And I tell them three things that I've learned, just that helped me. Because, in the rooms, you can't, talk about somebody else's recovery. But for me, the three things that help me out the most is one, like we talked about earlier, forgiveness. I had to forgive the people that hurt me in the past. Then I had to ask people to forgive me for the things that I've done. And then the hardest part is, forgiving myself, for all my past transgressions, and not having to carry that rucksack anymore.
I still struggle with that
So
one, man.
talk to us about forgiveness. Talk to us about
It's
that.
a good one to talk about, man. I want to touch real quick. You talked about, some people think that just like leaving is the answer, and running away from your problems is the answer to getting clean and to change. And you're right, man. It's not. You take you with you. I'm grateful that I had come to the realization prior to that the only common denominator in all of my issues was me. I had already realized that like I was the problem and that I had to do something.
Wait a minute. Can you say that louder for the people in the back?
The only common denominator with all of the bullshit in my life was me.
I love it. I talk to people because I used to talk in prisons and jails and all this stuff. And I used to tell them, listen, if you've been through 5 girlfriends and 3 ex-wives, guess what? The common denominator is you. You're the problem. So you need to look at yourself in the mirror and figure out, why am I the problem, and stop blaming everybody. Because like you said earlier, you could either be a victor or a victim. It's the mentality.
Man.
So I love that, brother. I love that.
At the same time, though, that brings us to a really interesting point here, because this has actually kind of been the focus of mine probably for the past 6 months, is where you balance that internal grace with accountability. And then not just that, but then how you also display that in your own personal relationships. Like how do I maintain a standard with the people in my life, with what I expect from them and what they expect from me. And that's something that I'm learning to enforce, or to even know what it is. Like what is healthy in a friendship or in a relationship. What should I expect from the people in my life? Enforcing those boundaries that we have. And then also being able to forgive when it falls short. It's that grace that we were talking about earlier that I really am, just for the first time, trying to wrap my head around, because my whole recovery was built on accountability and ownership, and it really is the Jocko Willink, it doesn't matter, try harder. You can do it. It's just a matter of figuring out how, that there is nothing that's impossible. It's just a matter of you giving up too early, kind of, that mindset around that. And then being able to,
I love that. Like, now I'm not a Grant Cardone guy at all, but I read his book. It's called 10X, and the thing that I got out of it is that for people that are listening to this, because you're hearing this for the first time, that whatever happens from this point on in your life, it's your fault. Whether it's good or it's bad, it's your fault. And when you take ownership on everything of your life is when you actually become free. So I love when you're talking about taking ownership of your life.
It's the secret to happiness, because that's when you can release the stress and worry and anxiety of everybody else's actions.
Yeah, and I love that. And now, definitely, I love the guys in our tribe, by the way. I'm just going to mention them. Stephen and Lane have an amazing book out
Alpha
called, yep. And it talks about a lot of exactly what we're talking about finding who you really are. So if you guys get a chance, check out that book. I don't get anything out of it. It's just a book that actually helped change my life a little bit.
I haven't read it yet, but it's
so
been
now,
on my list. It's been on my list. I know, man.
Oh, you got to get it, bro. The first chapter is mind blowing and a game changer.
I'm gonna get it after we get off this talk. I think that's gonna be the first thing on my to-do list. I want to.
Cool. All right.
Yeah,
so now
talk to the forgiveness thing real quick. I didn't really get a touch base on that.
Yeah,
I'd really like to.
Yeah.
So The biggest thing for me that has been revolutionary is learning that to forgive is not to forget, and that you can forgive and have no ill will or animosity and truly wish the best for somebody, but still recognize that they are not beneficial to your own self improvement, growth, or development, and that there is no need to maintain that relationship. I had this concept that every single relationship I had to maintain. It didn't matter what. That loyalty was deserved regardless, and always and forever. And being able to shift to a mindset of being able to love and forgive while still accepting the fact that it's just not what's best for either of us to have a relationship has been monumental to me, because all my issues came from when I'd forgive and then just put myself right back in that same vulnerable position I was in. Bless you. And
Nick,
then it would happen again, and I'm like, well, I'm forgiving them. Why is nothing changing? Well, because they're not changing and because you're allowing them to continue doing it. And then when I realized that is when I realized why I had so much animosity towards the concept of forgiving in the first place. And so being able to realize that I don't owe anybody my happiness but me, but I do owe everybody respect, has been huge in just how I deal with people and how I look at my relationships. And just that kind of framework helps everything else fall in place.
I love that, because, I also came to the realization that, when this is all said and done, it's just going to be me standing in front of the Lord. Everything else doesn't matter. And I am not in charge of other people's happiness. And, like Steve and Elaine talk about their book, when you start living without expectations, then you can't be let down, because, like if I do something for somebody expecting them to do something back and they don't do it, then it was my fault because I had an expectation that shouldn't be put on in the first place. So
have
if
you heard of the book No More Mr. Nice Guy by Robert Glover? He
yep,
talks about, it's
yep,
amazing
great
book,
book.
man. That book really opened my mind to a lot. But he talks about those secret contracts that we have, and that we do things for other people, expecting them to do something for us in return, or treat us a certain way, or XYZ, fill in the blank. But we don't ever say that out loud. We don't ever communicate that. And then we hold them at blame when they don't follow through on the unspoken contract we put them in.
I was talking to Stephen because I actually interviewed on a podcast. It hasn't been released yet, but and we're talking about, sometimes like guys, we think, all right, we're gonna get lucky tonight, so I'm gonna buy some flowers and I'm gonna buy some chocolates, and I give them to my wife, and she still, says I'm tired, because we put that expectation in our own minds, and so when it doesn't happen, we feel that down when we never told her our expectations. So, you
Absolutely.
know what I'm saying? So sometimes, like you said, you have to tell people, if you expect something, like especially if you're a business owner, if I do work for you, I expect to get paid. You can't just assume, because if you don't send me a bill, I'm not going to just write out a check for you because you assume
Yeah.
that
Yeah, that's
you're
the
going to
world.
pay
That's
me.
the real
You
world,
know?
man. And like we have a tendency to forget that relationships are still the real world, and human connection is still the real world, and that the laws of humanity apply across it. Like we take the concepts that we learn in business, but somehow think that they still don't apply in our personal relations.
So tell us about how tell us about your business that you got going on, because I see you're crushing it. By the way, I just sent a request on LinkedIn. I love what you're doing. So
Yeah,
tell
man.
us about what
So
you're
this is
doing.
actually a awesome transition, which is talking a little bit about how I got into entrepreneurship. Um, and so that was through my recovery process. I started going to counseling for the first time, and I couldn't find a company that was okay with me taking a half day every week to go to my appointment. And I had to make the decision, like, well, do I want to work or do I want to take care of myself? And I realized that I wasn't okay making that decision. That was the first time ever where I really wasn't okay fitting inside of a box that somebody else wanted to put me in, for lack of better words. And I really looked at it and I was like, you know what? screw that. I don't have to. And I was like, I'll just work for myself. I'll start my own construction company. I don't have to work for somebody else. And so 2018, very early 2018, like right at January, February, I started up a kitchen and bath remodeling company. BMP Contracting was what I named it. And with literally no other intention of just paying my bills, working for myself, like I was just a handyman, whatever it may be. I'd be happy with $45,000 a year cash, just a truck and some tools. But within about 3 months, I started to, for the first time ever, be exposed to business. And for lack of better words, man, the game of business. It's the biggest competition that there is. And that to me was immediately the most addictive thing I'd ever tasted, was just the game and the competitiveness of business. And
And I love that, especially because it is a game. Like I'm not a I'm a Miami Dolphins fan. Okay, I got to put that out there. Um, I'm not a
I'm a
New
Giants
England
fan, so I
Patriots
really
fan.
can't talk.
I'm not, and I'm not a Belichick fan. But he knows how to play the game better than everybody else, and that's why he's won 6 Super Bowls. So sometimes you have to get into the game, and then you have to figure out how to play the game better than everybody else. And sometimes, like one of the guys that I consider a mentor, now he's a friend, is Gary Vee.
No kidding.
He talks
That's
about
awesome, man.
The best business tactic is to care. And if you care about people and you love on people and you really, really want to take care of their needs, you're above 80% of all the other people out there in business. And the other 20% is just a dogfight.
100%. So this is man, this is, again, business has really taught me so much about my own self, my own improvement, learning how the world works through business relations has given me a greater perspective on people, how people think, how they process the world, how they make decisions. And that in and of itself I was able to look at that within myself, oh, wait a minute. Do I do X because of Z, which then translates to Y? I do. Okay. So what can I do about that? And kind of that just slow, methodical unrolling of my own framework based on dissecting other people's in a sales process. And that's what I fell in love with, man. I very quickly realized that I really didn't care as much about construction as I thought I did, and that I just wanted to market and sell. I wanted to understand people. I wanted to understand buyer psychology. I wanted to be able to to use that to be able to make a difference. It was what I was made for, man. Like, it was one of those things that you just do and it clicks and you're like, I've never experienced something as rewarding as this, regardless of my success. Regardless of performance, I am fully happy right now.
Well, they say the sales profession can either be the highest paying profession or the lowest paying profession, and it all depends on you.
And for me, it's not even this, like, the actual closing the deal sales. It's 100% brand psychology. How do people interpret you as a company from your online presence? Like, that is what really got me into it. Social media was the thing that captured my full attention. I built my construction company with no website, entirely on the back end of Facebook alone, up to just under $500,000 a year in 3 years. And at that point, I was like, oh my gosh, why is nobody talking about this in the construction industry? And I fell in love with social media, man. Like, that's where I really have the most fun, is social media. And so when you said Gary Vee, and everything just lit up. I was like, "Yup, okay, this is gonna be so much fun." Because social media.
Yep. I mean, 'cause, like, I actually got to spend some time with him, and one of my hats is actually hanging up
Oh, that's
in
so
his
cool,
office in New
man.
York.
That's so
So,
cool.
so if you ever see a wounded warrior, hat, that's
That's
mine. It's hanging
awesome.
up in his office. So now we're going to talk about, because um, I love marketing. I love sales. Um, Now, for me, it's all about relationship. Even like we know that Stephen Kuhn always talks about relationship capital. You'll, and I think it's all about building relationships and fostering those relationships. Like when I was in with General Nutrition, I would act. I was with the company almost 30 years, so I would take care of kids when they were in high school, and now they're bringing their high school kids to me. So I always thought about life in business as generational, relationships, to where a lot of see a lot of you get a lot of text message, you get a lot of people on LinkedIn. I send them a friend request. 3 seconds later, canned pitch is like 60 paragraphs long. I'm like,
You
I
did
know
not
you
just
just
do
did
that
not
to
write
me.
all that. And I'm like, so a lot of it is, ask me out for dinner before you ask me to marry me. You know what I mean? So talk to us about things to do and things not to do in today's
Man,
age
that's
in
beautiful.
social media. Because I love your monkey wrench marketing. That's why I just wanted to touch on that. So talk to us. I'm giving you the floor. Talk to us. Give me your TEDx speech on marketing, what to
Man, I
do
can
and what
summarize it
not to do.
literally into one sentence. It's not about you, it's about them. Every single business owner thinks
Boom.
that their
There you
social
go.
media is there to improve their sales. It's there to improve their brand awareness. It's there to help them grow as a company. And that is a 100% fat lie. That's not how social media works. It's not what it's there for. And it's not how Facebook makes its money. Facebook makes its money off the consumer and off the digester, not the businesses that are selling on it. And so, if you want to actually succeed in social media, start looking at what your consumer wants to see, not what you want them to see.
Okay, now like I said, this is going to get good. Now I'm going to have some fun because I'm a big, like I said, Gary V
Yeah,
guy.
man. I knew we were gonna vibe. You
Any
said
any
it, and I
kind of
was like,
stuff.
"All right, here we go. This is gonna get real fun."
You know, any self improvement. I love the Shark Tanks and those guys, but you know, talking about being real. Because there's certain people I can't mention names that a year ago, they're driving a Lambo, they're living in a mansion. A year later, they're in mom's basement and homeless,
You're talking about
and
me,
because they got found out that they were
man. I
entrepreneurs.
actually love that because this is a great time to mention that in between closing my construction company and up until April 8th, I have been homeless for over a year now, couch surfing and backpacking the country, and so I 100% failures as well at some point here because those are what really make it or break it. Like you just said, it's not a matter of if you fail, it's a matter of when, and it's a matter of how you bounce back. And the ones that just hang their heads and just walk away and don't have the humility to admit that they messed up and to rebuild are the ones that didn't deserve to be there in the first place.
But there's also, like if people meet me, like it was funny, like I went to the military influencer conference a couple years ago, and I told Steven and Lane, I'm like, listen, bro, if I come up there, everybody's getting hugs because that's the kind of guy that I am. So, I go up and, Steven's a big, huge 6'3" guy. Here I am giving him hugs. He's like, what are you doing? I said, because I told you
You got the heads
you're all
up.
getting hugs. Because that's the kind of, guy that I am. The way I am at home is the way I am on social, is the way I am anywhere. And a lot of people are not that way. And unfortunately or fortunately, with social media, people are getting found out. So can you talk about, being
Man, that's
honest on
huge. And
social media?
can hear the Gary V bleeding through this. And it's that whole transparency thing, that the internet isn't bad or good. The internet just exposes. And it's one of those things that the people that I've found that talk crap about social media and context here, again, we deal with only the construction industry. That's my industry. It's people I know. It's the clients I know. It's just what I can provide the best service in. So we're pretty exclusive to the home service industry. But within that industry, man, there is so much animosity and just contempt towards social media and the internet in general. They say that the construction industry is about 20 years behind your average small business when it comes to business process, sales process, and marketing specifically. And they literally look at it and they're like, no, it's just a bunch of scams and hacks and people that don't actually, have the ability to work that are relying on it to make money. But in all reality, they're scared of it because they don't have any repeat clients for a reason. They 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 sit there and they'll pass out business cards all day because they know that nobody can go on, that business card and look at what other people have to say about it. And so it's one of those things where if you're
And
not if you're not comfortable with other people talking about you online, then you need to figure out why.
the worst thing, because I talk to a lot of coaches and I talk to a lot of business, even some guys that are 7, 8, 9 figure guys. And if they walk into a business and ask, well, why aren't you doing social media? And they say, well, we're doing the things just because it's the way we've always done it. They usually get up, turn around, and walk away because they know that they don't have the mindset to change. Like me, I worked with GNC for 30 years. Right next door was a Radio Shack. And obviously we know what happened to Radio Shack and we know what's happened in the GNC because their mindset is we're going to do it. We've always done it. Well, if you take that mindset, you're out of here. See ya. It's a wrap. You know what I mean?
And that's what's so unique about the construction industry is that it hasn't hit yet. It's not a matter of it's not going to, or that the construction industry is unique. It's just that it's been delayed, and we have yet to see that implement. And it's going to be pretty nasty when we do.
So what was it like, to start your own marketing agency?
Well, man, this is a story. We are only 2.5 months into this now. And the reason that it's happened the way it has is because I actually was in a snowboarding accident about 4 weeks ago now. And bringing this all full circle on my birthday with my dad, where I broke my sternum and partially tore my rotator cuff and found myself out of work. And my full-time income, like I said before, was as a project manager for a construction company. And so it happened off the job site, off work. And so, workers' comp isn't there. I have no source of income. And so this marketing agency was a dream that I'd had for years, man. And since I started BMP, I was in love with it and just wanted to be able to do that. And got hurt and was like, well, I guess this is it, huh? Like, it's about time to do something. Man. And so here we are now, 2.5 months later, just trying to make something happen. We're extremely excited about what's coming next. But we're a little worried. I mean, that's not going to sit up here in front and say we're crushing it. We're doing us all this other great stuff. Like we are, but we're a brand new company that's trying to produce full-time income off the bat with no previous clientele, with no previous leads, and it's been interesting. It's really been a test of metal.
Now, because I was talking on Clubhouse the other day because I'm building a following on Clubhouse also.
I'm very upset that I don't have iPhone just so I can't be on there.
Well, according to Gary, the top two platforms for the next 24 months is going to be TikTok and Clubhouse. And I got permanently banned from Clubhouse for posting stuff about military suicide. They permanently banned me, but that's okay. But anyway, so you started your own business, and now I've talked to people, and I said, how many, like if I'm talking on a stage and I say, how many people have ran over a squirrel? Almost everybody's going to raise their hand. And the reason why most squirrels get run over is because they don't make the decision. They didn't make a decision to go left or go right. They stood and got ran over because of indecision. So sometimes you just have to make a decision. Because the worst thing you could do is not make a decision, because then you're still
That
making a
is
decision. You know what I mean?
100% the truth, man. That's something that I feel like that those of us that have served in the military and specifically in any kind of combat arms role has really had a unique perspective on. You know, that they've had that experience to know that a bad decision made promptly is better than the right decision, you know, pushed off. And so it really is something that I've noticed in the tribe specifically, but then also just with I have a few close friends that are also, you know, combat arms that are entrepreneurs. And it's just that crush, attack, kill mindset and figure it out as you go, you know, because I could sit here and I could debate what I'm going to do, or I could just try something and figure out how it goes and then react.
Okay,
And I
so
think a
now,
lot of that comes with confidence,
now,
you know?
obviously, because you're starting a new company, I always say that, whatever business you want to get into, make sure that you have mentors that are in the same business, because you don't have to make the same mistakes they did. And most of the time, they're willing to help you, if you just humble yourself and ask. So, who are some of your mentors that you're looking at to learn from, so you don't have to make the same mistakes?
So we've got like two categories here. We've kind of got the non-personal professional level, you know, like Gary Vee is a perfect example of that for me. Um, Unfortunately, I'm not as cool as you, I guess, and I can't consider him a personal mentor. But I would also say on that line, Allie Boyd is a very up and coming marketer that only deals with local businesses, and so I've learned a lot from her as well. But on a personal level, I would say that my buddy Tyler Chartier,
Oh, great
I
person.
think,
Great.
man,
Great
Tyler is
person.
such a great dude.
We're
Me
going to
and
have to
him built
tag him in
Welcome to
this,
Wealthy.
definitely.
Yeah, man. Do you have you seen Welcome to Wealthy?
Yep.
Yeah, me and him built that last year, and that was when me and Tyler really got close. Was in the 6-8 months that we started Welcome to Wealthy, and then built it from the ground up together. Before I kind of really struggled with my mental health again last year, and just kind of took a break from everything. But he is everything, man, from faith to perspective to actual technical expertise as a marketer. You know, he's one of my best friends. He really is. And then he introduced me to another guy, Matthew Peterson, that also just another whiz, man, just straight technical whiz. And we all are on the same, for lack of better words, wavelength when it comes to personal progression, mindset, and how we look at the world around us. And so being able to find those two individuals that have the same philosophy and lifestyle and outlook as me, that have so much to be able to offer me from a technical perspective, has been truly humbling.
Okay. Last couple questions. Because we're talking about mental health, and I have now. Well, they say I have PTSD, and I think it's borderline personality disorder, whatever. Uh, and sometimes, like for my mental health, like I've been doing a life hack that somebody taught me, and it's been working for me. I'll work all day until my cell phone until my battery goes down. Then I'll plug it in and then go do something else that I enjoy until the battery is back to 100%. So I'm actually getting myself, getting my energies charged. And most of the time it's either playing guitar or playing NASCAR 2020. But what are some of the things that you do to help yourself? Because as we all know, you can't pour from an empty cup. So what do you do for yourself, your mental health and self-care?
Man, I snowboarding is my biggest passion. I love it more than anything else. I'd go every single day of the year if I could. But I am very blessed in the capacity that I've come to the acceptance. And it took me a while because everybody always told me that there's no way that's possible. But literally working on my projects gives me the most fulfillment. Like it honestly gives me more anxiety to not be working than it does to be working. And so I really have to try to find things that like wholeheartedly enjoy. And so the only things that I've ever been able to find that really satisfy that tick for me more than actual business does is snowboarding. And then also, not any good at it, not anything that I could boast of, but just I like to mess around with like Muay Thai and MMA and Krav Maga and stuff like that. I no good again, but enjoy the crap out of beating the crap out of me.
Well, I get it. So I love that. So last two questions. How do we get in touch with you? How do we find you? How do we support whatever mission you're doing?
Yeah, man. You can probably find us on social media at Monkey Wrench Marketing. And that's our handle. That's our username for Facebook and Instagram. You can find me just Caleb Blair on Facebook or on Instagram at Real Caleb Blair is the handle. And then our website, which is actually going to be up here by the end of next week. So I don't know when this will go live, but probably will be up by then, is monkeywrenchmarketing.com.
All right, cool. I love that. Okay, now last question. I love asking this question because if I ask 1,000 people, I get 1,000 different answers, and they're all interesting. We live in such a crazy world. Like, we have 3 children, me and my bride, and homeschooling, and so we live in a crazy world where you got grandparents homeschooling kids, COVID. So if I ask the average person to do something in 7 days, they're probably never going to get to it. But if I ask somebody to take an actionable step in the next 24 hours, they're more likely to do it. So if somebody is struggling in their business, now you can answer this 2 different ways. If somebody's struggling in their business or with their own mental health, what can they do in the next 24 hours to start to get help?
Can I give you one for each?
Yeah, definitely.
All right. So if you are struggling in your business and you are not sure what direction to go or what to do about it, and you're really at a loss, is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
The loss question? Okay.
Yep.
My biggest piece of advice, man, would be to reach out to the most intimidating individual that you know, and then also the closest person that you know that has subject matter expertise. So for me, that would be like reaching out to Gary Vee or Ali Boyd. There's not a guarantee that they respond or that it would happen, but it would build confidence in myself to be able to do it. And then even just it literally costs you nothing to try, right? And then if you were to be able to get in touch or get some kind of response, the value in that response would be astronomical. But then also having somebody that you have a personal relationship with that cares about you and would be willing to give you some perspective, and preface the conversation with asking for that perspective without being worried about hurting your feelings, and that's something that I appreciate a lot in my friendships, is that there's a lot of straightforwardness. We all understand that we love each other from our hearts, and so anything that's said is said in love, and we don't have to worry too much about hurting each other's feelings to be able to give productive feedback. I can say, hey dude, I really think you're messing this up. I really think that you need to work on this and hone on this, and it be received in love, and vice versa. I'm like, oh dude, thank you, I'm so glad you pointed that out because I never would have seen that otherwise. And being comfortable with that, and then progressing that relationship. Don't let it die. Have those accountability partners in your life that are going to help you and give you feedback that you trust. The next thing with the mental health is get into counseling. It's the best thing I ever did for myself. But that is hingent on your involvement. I went to counseling for a full year before I ever actually cared about going to counseling. And that full year of counseling was an absolute waste. I got nothing out of it. But the minute that I decided that I actually wanted to be there and that I wanted to be different and that I actually wanted the help that they were providing, I actually started to open up. I actually started to make an effort to be able to talk about what I was feeling, even if it wasn't comfortable, because then I was vested. I was invested in my growth. I was invested in me doing it because it cost me something, and that cost was vulnerability.
I love that, brother. So, guys, if you're listening to this, definitely reach out to my brother Caleb. Check him out, Monkey Wrench Marketing. I'm probably going to be asking for some help in the future, and I have no problem asking for help if I need help with anything, because I'm a low tech redneck, and and you know what? I'm
man,
okay.
I was that too. I straight up, I feel that very much so. You got me, man.
But I'm okay because I know that maybe that's not my strength, but it's some of my friends' strength. So why not use my friend's strength, and they use my strength for getting their stories out there. I also want to thank our sponsor for today, Paul Hudson. He's doing amazing things. If you love swag, check out victorywarrior.com. We got a book coming out, and actually I wrote one of the chapters, so definitely check him out. Brother, I just want to thank you for coming on and hanging out today, and I hope that I exceeded your expectations of what you thought our show would be.
Man, this was such a pleasure. Excuse me. I had so much fun. Honestly, this was such an honor to be able to talk to you. I've been wanting to get on this podcast since it was the Comeback Coach, man.
Yeah, so
So
we're
to finally be able to be here and be able to have this deep-hearted conversation I'm blessed, bro.
and
I'm
then the
so
only thing
blessed.
I'm going to ask is when we log off, or just send me a picture. I already got a good picture, I think, from you, and a short quote, for the graphic, and then it'll be in a couple of weeks because I'm kind of backlogged because I can.
Are we off the record now?
But
Are we? Are we post cut here?
no, we're talking.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Okay. I think you have all that.
Yep.
I sent you the bio. Is that what you're looking for?
Nope. Just like you said, I'm going to need a picture later and a quote, a short quote that I could just put in your graphic, so everybody can know what your favorite quote is.
Oh, an actual quote.
Yeah.
Oh, man, gotcha.
All right, brother.
All right, we'll have to throw it in there.
Thank you, and have an amazing week. And thank you for being a part of my inner circle.
Rich, thank you so much for having me on, man. It was such a pleasure. God bless you, dude.
God bless you, and I'm so proud of you, brothers. Stay clean at 24 hours at a time, brother.
Hey, one meal at a time.
That's it. All right, brother. Bye.
Later.
Thank you for joining us today. Please hit subscribe and share. Please feel free to leave us a comment.